this way. So for you, for Android, I have to turn this on so that it automatically rotates this way. For that, you need to make sure the rotate lock is on. Because otherwise, it'll make sure it'll force you to stay here. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare
Rajkacharya. Ashtodarsha Shri Srimad Divine Grace by Charan Bhaktivedanta Swami Sri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Krishna Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanand.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. You can do that side. So let's leave the classes so that devotees to come and also for recording. Let's give a big Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. Visiting us for the first time. Is the first time? This is the first time I'm seeing. 24 years I've never seen you. Thank you very much for driving Prabhu. Prabhu lives in New York. Recently moved to Indiana. And then he drove Prabhu from Cincinnati to Columbus. We really thank you. Appreciate that. And Prabhu doesn't need introduction, but however, for my own purification, few words I'll say. He's my Shiksha Guru. I'm here, whatever classes I give, whatever inspiration, whatever come, I derive from him. I can tell you from a bottom of the heart. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for inspiring me. And then you indicate every day I hear his lectures. Prabhu is an author, more than 25 books. He's a philosopher, and he's also a guide for many people around the world. He travels 6 months around the world, and then 6 months is based in India. So Australia, Europe, India, Canada, you name it. And then he has 2 websites, thespiritualsenses.com and geetadaily.com. So he does every day Gita Daily. How many words, Prabhu? So 300 words. Can you imagine? For how many years?
12 years now.
12 years, every day, 300 words from Gita. Just imagine. I can't imagine. And then his main forte or strength, which he's offering to his conscious Prabhupada, is question answers, very succinctly, very sublime, very powerful. The way he addressed the questions, he has more than 10,000 questions already answered. And then it's Bhagavad Gita question and answer sessions. We didn't see 10,000 questions Arjuna is asking, but he answered more than 10,000 questions and he's keep going on. He has, in my car if I see, I have his pen drive. How many times I heard, I don't know. This is my sense gratification, hearing his person answers. The way he articulate, very nice. Unless somebody's, my opinion, employed by Radharani, nobody cannot speak that kind of questions. Because he speaks from theology perspective, from scientific perspective, Siddhanta perspective, perspective, Lila perspective, many directions. So that gives me so much of solace. Thank you very much for being part of our life. He comes sometimes 2 times a year to Columbus. And he also does college preaching programs, which we go to do on Monday night, OSU. And then, what else? There's so many things I can tell. And then, request all the Matas to come this side, not to block the way. And then those who are sitting in the back, front row, the chairs, if you can go behind, those who come later, they can sit in the front. So let's accommodate other devotees. Eventually, the entire temple room will be filled. Without any further delay, let's offer one more time our respectful obeisance, Prabhupada. And a little, if you have phones, we can switch off. Really appreciate it. Thank you all. Hare Krishna.
ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So I'm delighted to be here with all of you at the lotus feet of the only dancing Lord in the ISKCON universe. Only dancing deities. Isn't it? I think nowhere else, as far as I know, within ISKCON temple. It's wonderful to be here. So, I'll be addressing today a question that, especially since I come to America, several Western devotees have asked me 4 or 5 times. And it just illustrates the huge gulf that is there in perception in India and in the West. So the question that I'm getting from Western devotees is that, is India becoming a religious fanatical country? I had gone to Ayodhya after the Ayodhya temple inauguration, some beautiful Ram Lalla temple deity, and there's a whole mood of celebration there. Okay. Is it audible now?
Yes.
Okay. So the question comes that when we are talking about the establishing the Lord Ram's temple, and the idea is that's a precursor to Ram Rajya. You'd like to know, what does Ram Rajya mean? Does that mean a religious theocracy where only this form of worship is allowed and everything else is condemned? And that makes a lot of people very, very nervous, understandably so. So I've addressed this question in different ways at different times, but I will talk about it from the perspective in which the Bhagavad Gita approaches the idea of a Rajya Rishi, a saintly king. So I'll talk about this in 3. Any problem? It's not audible?
The screen, it's not, it's shared but then it's stopped.
Did it fall out? Are you connected it digitally or have you connected?
Yeah, it was wireless connected.
Oh, okay. I think when I started the screen recording, it went off. Can you connect it? You are doing the recording, no? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me, was it? You used what? Second screen?
Connected, Wi-Fi is connected.
Oh, get to Windows.
Can I try? Quick share.
Which one? Quick share.
No, not quick share.
No, there's a way to do this over here. How have you connected?
Can I try? Screen
Smart View is there over here.
link to Windows. Can
No, not
you
that one. Not that. Smart View is there over here somewhere. Smart View here. It's called Just here. Okay. So, is it visible now? So, if you consider that when we talk about establishing Ram Raj, how does Lord Ram go about doing it? How does Krishna go about doing it? What does it actually mean? So let's try to look at that. In the chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about his mission in 4 verses. 7, 8, 9 and 10. Now 7 and 8 are well-known verses. Yada yada hi dharmasya, and then dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So now there is a significant difference in these 2 verses. Let's put it. Yeah. 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. So 7 and 10 is about establishing dharma. Krishna is saying dharma samsthapanarthaya. It is not bhakti samsthapanarthaya. And I'll explain what is the difference between the 2. And the next 2 verses, Janma karma cha me divyam, and then Vitaraga bhaya krodha, where Krishna, that is about bhakti. Now the way Krishna is explaining is, dharma, if you see, what does he say characteristic of dharma? He says, vinashaja dushkritam, those who are miscreants, we sideline them, disempower them, neutralize them. And those who are sukritinam, those we empower them, we establish them. So in one sense, when Krishna is talking about dharma, this is about virtuous order. order in society, what in today's time we call as law and order. An order that is based on virtue. And this, Krishna says, is universal. This, he says, he will use even force. If there are miscreants who are opposing, he will use force to sideline those miscreants. And he will establish dharma. But the next two verses, this is individual. Krishna says that those who understand my pastimes, those who understand my true nature through my pastimes, they will come to me. It's not coming properly. Further.
Yeah, there is a lot of echo.
I understand, yeah. Is this better now? Closer to the mouth.
No, further.
Now?
Yeah, much more.
But now you will not be able to hear it.
No, we are able to hear.
You are still able to hear? Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay, what happened now? Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. And I was traveling once with one devotee preacher. He is a very sarcastically humorous person. So I was using the sound system. There was a lot of disturbance. And then he didn't mention it only. So then I asked him, are you able to hear the disturbance? He said, yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because that disturbance is better than the disturbance of your voice. So, one aspect of bhakti outreach is to disturb those who are peaceful. And the other is to make peaceful those who are disturbed. So it depends on what is the requirement at a particular place. But this, the second part, bhakti, what Krishna says, it is individual. It is those who become attracted to me, in this way they will come to me. And they will give up raga, bhaya, krodha. They will give up attachment, aversion, anger, fear. And then they will attain love for me. So, bhakti is a matter of the heart. Bhakti can't be legislated. You cannot pass a law and tell people you have to all worship this God only. That is a matter of the heart. That has to be individually inspired. At the same time, basic law and order in society, that is not a matter of the heart. That is essential. That is not voluntary. So these two are both missions of Krishna. But they are two distinct missions. We could say that they are interrelated, at the same time they are independent. So if you consider like a pyramid, say at the top is pure love, prema. So the upper part is bhakti and the lower part is dharma. So Krishna comes to establish dharma and he comes to inspire bhakti. The two are different. Establish means force may be required to do it. This is what has to be done. But bhakti is to be inspired. And this difference is essential to understand. In the Vedic tradition, there is always room for individual expression, individual choice with respect to bhakti. So, if we consider the Kurukshetra war itself, on one side we have the Pandavas and other side we have the Kauravas. Now it was a dharma yuddha. It was not a bhakti yuddha. It was, if you see, the confusion has come because nowadays the word dharma has become equated with religion. And then religion we equate with bhakti many times. But if you will see, among the Pandavas, there was Drupada. And Drupada was a Shaivite. Their family deity, their Kuladaivat, was Lord Shiva. And it was not that when the Pandavas married their family, the Pandavas said, all of you have to become Vaishnavas. It was not like that. On the Kaurava side, Bhishma was a Vaishnava. Bhurishrava was a Vaishnava. So, this was not a fight over religion per se. It was not that it was that after the Pandavas won the war, the Pandavas told Dhritarashtra, "You chant Hare Krishna, I will shoot you now." It was not like that. So it was a war to establish the basic principles of virtue, to establish order in society. We know Duryodhan, what kind of ruler he would have been. Duryodhan had tried to attempt to disrobe Draupadi in the royal assembly. Now, normally, if somebody wants to do that kind of crime, violate a woman, they will do it in secret where there will be no evidence, there are no eyewitnesses. Now, if somebody does it in public, that means they have no fear of the law. Not only in public, if they go to a police station or a court and they do a crime over there, that means not only do they have no fear of the law, rather the law has fear of them. Isn't it? So, if such a person were given unchallenged power, the mind shudders to think what that person would do. Now, it is true that Duryodhan did not do much atrocities against the citizens in general during the 12-13 year of rule that he had while the Pandavas were in their forest. But that was because he knew there was going to be confrontation and he wanted to win them over. So, and he didn't consider his citizens to be a threat. So, if anybody later became a threat, how brutally he would have dealt with them. So, such a person needed to be brought down. So, the war was fought for that purpose. And later on in the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna talks about bhakti, it's interesting that the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, what is it called? You know the title?
Devotional.
Yes,
devotional.
Bhakti Yoga, devotional service. Now, within that, a major part of the chapter from 13 to 20 is about the characteristics of a devotee. Not just of a characteristic of a devotee, but a characteristic of a devotee dear to Krishna. Yomad bhaktaha same priyaha. Such a devotee is dear to me. And significantly, the characteristics that Krishna mentions over here, they are not devotional characteristics. Krishna doesn't say, my devotee wakes up every morning and chants Hare Krishna or does Mangal Arati. He doesn't say that my devotee chants 16 rounds or fasts on Ekadashi. What Krishna talks about is behavioral qualities. Behavioral qualities means, Krishna says, Adveshta sarvabhutana maitra karunayavacha. Such a person is non-envious towards anyone, is a friend of everyone. Santushta satatam yoga. Such a person is satisfied. One of the things he says is, such a devotee, yasman no dvijate loko, loka no dvijate chaya. Such a devotee does not disturb others and is not disturbed by others. So all the qualities here that Krishna emphasizes are behavioral qualities. Now, of course, devotional qualities are also mentioned. For example, line 13, 14, Mahatmanastu mam partha, satatam kirtayanto mam. They are mentioned, no doubt they are important. But Krishna's emphasis here is on behavioral qualities. So, when we are, with this background, when we talk about Ram Rajya, there are two aspects to it. There is bhakti and there is dharma. Now, dharma, broadly speaking, the way the Gita talks about is, it's virtue. Dharma basically means acting righteously, doing the right thing. And when we talk about the Bhagavad Gita, as I said, is not meant to establish bhakti. It is meant to, the war of Kurukshetra was fought to establish dharma. And then of course it is to inspire bhakti, no doubt. But this difference is there. And when we talk about Ram Rajya, now what made Ram Rajya so special? We could say it is because Ram was the king. Of course, that is true. But that is not the only thing. It is also because the citizens were virtuous. Generally, sometimes if there are movies, sometimes the whole movie is like a one hero show. There's some superstar and they carry the whole show by their magnetic power. The villain, the supporting cast, nobody even remembers them. And okay, sometimes those movies run by that star power of that one character. But really great movies that are there, no, it's yes, the hero is a great character, but all the other characters are also great. And then the interplay between those characters, and then all that we see, okay, that really makes the movie great. So if you see Ramayana, Lord Ram is a great character, but it's not that Lord Ram is the what they call the show stealer. No, every character in the Ramayana is special. We see Sita has her own character, Lakshman has his own character, Bharat has his own distinct character. And they are all exemplary and extraordinary in their own ways. Hanuman is an extraordinary character. In fact, in some ways you could say Hanuman is the show stealer in the Ramayana. Isn't it? The most recited, the most loud section in the Ramayana, in the Valmiki Ramayana, is the Sundarkand. Now, of course, in other editions of the Ramayana also Sundarkand is, or the section associated with the Sundarkand, corresponding Sundarkand is the most loud. And the Sundarkand is, there's one Western scholar who studied the Ramayana, he said, the Sundarkand is the most puzzling part of it. He said that the Ramayana is supposed to be very popular and Ram is supposed to be very popular. But the most popular section of the Ramayana is where Ram is absent. In Sundarkand, Lord Ram is present only in the beginning and the end. In the beginning, he sees off Hanuman. He gives Hanuman the signet so that she can give it to Sita. And then at the end, he comes back. And then Lord Ram is so pleased with Hanuman's heroic service that Lord Ram embraces him. And that's where the Sundarkand ends. So the most popular section of the Ramayana does not feature Ram directly at all. So what it features? The devotee of Ram. The devotee of Ram. So the idea is that while Ram Rajya involves, so what makes Ram Rajya special? It is not just the character of Ram. He is special, no doubt. But it is also the character of the, you could call the supporting team. And so when we are talking about establishing Ram Rajya, is it about establishing bhakti or is it about establishing dharma? Is it about devotion or is it about virtue? Well, it is both at one level. At the same time, there is a difference. So the way the Bhagavad Gita speaks about this 12th chapter, we could talk about that there is virtue and there is devotion. Now we could say devotion is the highest virtue, and there is a way of looking at it. That's one way of looking at it. But at the same time, there is a difference. There is virtue and there is devotion. And these two, if we understand them in terms of 4 quadrants, if we consider there is no devotion and no virtue, that means that people are atheistic, godless, but they are not just, even if people are materialistic. See, even materialistic people, they can be virtuous to some extent. They can be responsible, they can be civil. But if there is no devotion and no virtue, that is hell. There is no God and people are selfish, people are lusty, people are greedy, people are short-tempered. That is what hell essentially is. Hell is, if you see in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about hell. In many religious traditions, there are 2 extremes. One is hell is either overemphasized and their preaching starts with hell. If you don't, God loves you so much. How much? If you don't surrender to Him, He will send you to hell forever. They would say it that way. They would say He will send you to hell. But that's what essentially it is. So, if you consider, there's a fundamental difference between the idea of hell in, say, the Abrahamic traditions now and in the Vedic tradition. See, in the Abrahamic tradition, hell is for non-believers. If you don't believe in God, you'll go to hell. In the Vedic tradition, hell is for the wrongdoers. You see, whom does Krishna say they go to hell? Those who are lusty, greedy, angry. Trividham narkasyedam dwaram nashanam atmana. He says, they are the narkasya dwara. He doesn't say that you don't believe in me, so you'll go to hell. So hell is it's like a prison for a law and order problem. Hell is not a punishment for disbelief. Now we could say that disbelievers will become wrongdoers. That's a possibility. But it's not that, say, non-believers and wrongdoers. You could say there could be a big intersection between them also. But they are not the same thing. Krishna is not saying that if you don't believe in me, you will go to hell. He's saying those who do wrong, they will go to hell. So the idea is that when there is no virtue and there is no devotion, then it's certainly a hellish condition. Now if you consider the other two possibilities, there is virtue but there is no devotion. So if you say there is no virtue and no devotion, so it's like this life is miserable and the next life will be, you could say, much more miserable. It is going to be, the consequences are going to come. In ordinary society cannot function if people are just lusty, greedy. You cannot just walk on the street, somebody is going to rob you, somebody is going to violate you. It will be a terrible situation and actions will have consequences. Now if there is virtue but there is no devotion, then maybe you could say this life could be okay, but the next life is going to be difficult. It is, at least that person is not going to be spiritually elevated. Now where they are going to go, you could say, now when I am talking about virtue and devotion, I am talking at an individual level as well as at a social level. We will come to social level a little later. At an individual level, that person will go wherever their karma is. But there is a significant difference. I will come back to this a little later. Now when there is devotion but no virtue, that is where there is fanaticism. Fanaticism is not due to too much devotion. It is due to devotion that does away virtue. When devotion is emphasized so much that basic human decency, basic human civility, basic humanity is neglected, that kind of devotion is what leads to fanaticism. That means if you don't believe in my God, however good you might be, that is of no good. That is a terrible idea. So basically fanaticism it comes in two brands. There is exclusivism and there is extremism. So exclusivism is more in thought. That means we alone have exclusive rights to God. Only if you follow us, you are going to go to God. If not, you're not. You're going to go to hell. So this was in Indian history. Now, if you consider Gandhiji, he was a very virtuous person. He had certain philosophical conceptions. And he lived, now every person, if you want to find fault, you can always find fault. But he was overall a virtuous person. So he's asked both to a Christian and a Muslim, what is the destination? Because he doesn't believe our particular path. He may be a virtuous person, but he's going to go to hell. So exclusivism is the idea that we alone have the right to God. Now extremists, exclusive say everyone else is going to go to hell. Extremists are even kinder. They say anyway you're going to go to hell, why delay it? We will help you get there faster. So extremism is in action. where people become intolerant. And people, as soon as they grab power, they will destroy anyone and everyone who does not agree with their belief system. And we will see extremism, it is always, it tends to multiply. What it means is, it tends to multiply its targets. So for example, if you consider Islamic extremism. Extremism can be then any religion. I'm not singling out Islam over there. But Islamic extremism, now it's not that Islamic extremism targets non-Muslims only. It targets Muslims also. So Shias fight against Sunnis. Why? Because it is not just your religion is wrong, it is also if your interpretation of my religion is different from me, even that is wrong. And that is also to be condemned. And then those people will also be destroyed. So it just keeps growing more and more and more. So this is where, if we consider what is the inspiration that people get from the Ramayana, what makes the Ramayana so special is not just that, oh, everybody is worshipping Ram. It is everybody is exhibiting, manifesting virtue in the Ramayana, or at least trying to manifest virtue. So there is the sacrifice and selflessness of Lakshman, the sacrifice and selflessness of Bharat. There is the adventurous service attitude of Hanuman. So there is virtue manifested. And the enduring inspiration, if you consider the Ramayana's legacy, it has been both. It is not just bhakti, oh worship Ram, worship Ram, worship Ram. But it is also dharma in the form of virtue. It has been, dharma is basically in terms of selflessness, in terms of sacrifice, in terms of service. So, the primary inspiration that millions have derived for millennia from the Ramayana is the inspiration of sacrifice and selflessness. Just as Lakshman put aside his own happiness for serving Ram. Sita was told by Ram, stay in the kingdom. He says, no, I'll come with you. Bharat he just got the kingdom. He could have taken it, but he said, no, this is not my right. I am not going to enjoy it. I will do the duty. I'll do the responsibility, but I won't enjoy the privilege. Now, most leaders are exactly opposite. They want the privilege and the responsibility, let somebody else take care of it. So, this is what has been, in one sense, a significant inspiration of the Ramayana. Now, this is not to say that bhakti is not an inspiration. Bhakti is also an inspiration, no doubt about it. But the fear is that if devotion is divorced from virtue, that is when devotion becomes fanatic. And the legacy of the Ramayana is not to divorce the two. The legacy of the Ramayana is to integrate both of them. So Ravan is condemned not because he is not a devotee of Ram. Ravan is killed not because he refused to chant Ram's names. That's not the point. It is because he has been acting viciously. It's because he has been a predator for a long, long time. And finally, जैसे पाप का घड़ा भर जाता है. So finally, the chickens come home to roost in English. He has to pay the consequences for the consequences of his actions. So the point here is that if the inspiration that somebody derives from the Ramayana is, or from the establishment of the Ram temple, or the idea of establishing Ram Rajya, it's only, we will chant Ram's names and we'll make everyone chant Ram's names. And anybody who doesn't chant Ram's names, we will disempower them, we'll destroy them. That is what will lead to fanaticism. But that is not at all the mood of the Ramayana. And we see that Srila Prabhupada, when he presented Krishna consciousness also, he had both these aspects to it. The chanting Hare Krishna is the bhakti part. The 4 regulative principles, they are not just a set of 4 rules. They are basically emblematic of the emphasis on virtue. So the rules are important, but what the rules signify is important. What each rule signifies is cleanliness, mercy, purity, things like that. Those values. So we may say that, okay, these particular rules are not universal. Yeah, all religions don't follow it. Well, not to speak of all religions don't follow it. Even all expressions of the Vedic tradition don't necessarily follow it. Isn't it? There are religious traditions within the Vedic context where meat may be eaten. In Durga Puja that happens, things like that. That's in Kali Puja, it's not Durga Puja so much. Kali Puja it happens. So, but the point is that these four rules, they signify four fundamental virtues. And that's why again the point is that the four legs of dharma. So it's interesting, the four legs of dharma do not include bhakti. Because bhakti is higher. Bhakti is not below. There are foundations. So the focus when we talk about Ram Rajya is first of all establishing ourselves in virtue and establishing virtue in society. After that, bhakti is voluntary. So if without establishing virtue, bhakti is imposed, that is what will lead to fanaticism. But that is not the mood of the Ramayana. Now, this brings us to the last part, that in general, for the establishment of dharma. Now from dharma, eventually bhakti will come, but bhakti is later. For the establishment of dharma, there are two broad tools. There is Shastra and there is Shastra. Shastra is wisdom broadly. Shastra is weapon. So the establishment of virtue is done primarily by helping people see how virtuous living is good. Say for example, now, if maybe 20-30 years ago, as industrialization was growing, the idea was greed is good. And the more we can accumulate, that is good. But now, as we become a little more aware, the idea is greed is good. We have to live on this planet and we can't exploit this planet indiscriminately. Our future generations will not be able to live. We ourselves will not be able to live in the later years of our life. So the idea is virtue can be communicated through intelligent education. Now whether everybody accepts it or not, that's a different question. But the point is, the primary way to convey the importance of virtue is through education. Now in the pandemic we all had online purchasing. Now when the internet was just new, and when this whole online business started, people at that time, it was very nascent, there was no regulatory authorities, people could have cheated. Somebody on Craigslist, they could have kept a product over there and the product would have been substandard. And somebody who's paying it, they could have sent a bounce check. Now that other person is in a different part of the country, who's going to chase them, and it's going to be complicated. But there is a basic level of trust. And without trust, nothing can function. When people do business, you have things written down, but you do business with people whom you trust. Without trust, nothing can function. Even at a material level, when people work as a team, trust is a virtue. Being trustworthy is a virtue. So some people can be very short-sighted and they think, I'll betray others, I'll backstab and I'll rise to the top. Well, they can rise to the top, but even if they get to the top, they will be utterly lonely over there. And there will be 100 other people who wanting to stab them over there. So basically the point of it is that virtue can be communicated. And there are many people who will accept the value of virtue through the education. Now there are people who will not accept that. So those people who will not accept that, for them, so virtue is accepted by many. And Shastra is for those people who are driven by vice. Shastra, sorry, not Shastra. That there are some people who just reject virtue. Like Duryodhana, for example, when he tried to poison Bhima, when he tried to burn the Pandavas, when he tried to disrobe Draupadi, after, if we consider Karna, Karna was the person who suggested, let's drag Draupadi and disrobe her. But to his credit, later Karna expresses regret. He said, I just got so carried away in trying to please Duryodhana that I lost my good sense. But does Duryodhana ever express any regret? Does Duryodhana regret what happened in the assembly, what happened? Well, he did regret. He regretted that he was not successful. The regret was not that I did wrong. The regret is that my wrong was not fully successful. So, there are people who have no respect for virtue. There are people who are completely driven by vice. And such people have to be brought down by force. But the force again, the Shastra, is used to establish virtue in society. Because such people, not only they not want to live virtuously, they also will not let other people live virtuously. They will exploit them. So such people have to be stopped. So broadly we could say the three modes, you could understand them in three ways. And another summary, there is goodness, there is weakness, and there is wickedness. Now goodness is broadly associated with sattva. Now normally we will not consider people in Rajoguna as weak. But weakness here is that Rajoguna can either be influenced by sattva or it can be influenced by tamas. So a person who has a lot of ambition, that ambitious person, if a person who is virtuous, then they will pursue their ambition in a virtuous way. But if that ambitious person meets someone who is vicious, say, okay, you have to become the wealthiest person in the country. By hook or by crook, it doesn't matter. So they are weak in the sense that they are influenceable. See, their desires are so strong, this weakness refers to their intelligence. In Rajas, the desire is strong, very strong. Karmanam ashamahas pruha, insatiable desire is there. But that desire can be directed. So their intelligence is related. How do I fulfill my desire? If they meet someone who is virtuous, then they will drive their ambition in a constructive way. But there are people in tamas who are wicked. Now these people, for them virtue is only for exhibiting if it helps them to pursue their vice. That means they will act honest till they earn the trust of someone and they will backstab that person. What to speak of backstab? They mean front stab also, if that opportunity comes up. So now, it is for such people, punishment or disciplining is the only way. And yes, if the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, both of them have wars. But this war, it's not religious violence. Although it comes in what is considered a religious text. But the war was not fought, you are not believing in my God, I will kill you if you don't believe in my God. So it was not religious violence in the way in which religious violence is understood in the Western world. It was more violence because these people were wicked. These people were wicked. So, yes, the force and violence are factors. They're just unavoidable in human society. But they have to be carefully used against those who are wicked. See, people who are weak, people who are good, they may also make mistakes. But they're forgiven and they're facilitated, they'll rise upwards. But people who are wicked, the forgiveness for them, they will only grab the opportunity to hurt the other person afterwards. So forgiveness, if we want reconciliation, we want peace, we want harmony, yes, that is true. But how can you have harmony with people who absolutely don't want harmony? How can we have tolerance towards people whose very driving principle of life is intolerance? Isn't it? Now, everybody is not like that, but there are people like that. So, forgiveness with wickedness. That means or rather forgiveness for those with wickedness. That is foolishness. That will lead to self-destruction, and eventually destruction of society. So it is not that violence is ruled out in the Vedic dharmic context, but it's not that violence is a means ever for establishing bhakti. That will never work. Even Krishna himself at the end of the Gita tells Arjuna that you do as you desire. Yatechasi tatha kuru. Now you have heard my message and now you do as you desire. So even God does not force devotion on anyone. And that is the overall mood of the Vedic ethos. So Ram Rajya is much more about establishing dharma, or in sense of virtue, than it is about establishing bhakti. So I'll make one last point which I'll conclude, that bhakti and dharma, you can say devotion and virtue, they are two distinct things. They are parts of the same plan progressively, but there's also one more relationship. Now, bhakti can inspire dharma and dharma can inspire bhakti. These two are symbiotic. That means if somebody is devoted, if somebody really practices earnest devotion, then it is easier for them to overcome their lust, overcome their greed, overcome their anger. And conversely, if somebody has already less lust, less greed, less anger, then they can take up bhakti more easily. So it is not that, again, we divorce dharma and bhakti. They are very much related, and our purpose, when we are talking about Ram Rajya, it is not that bhakti is not there at all. And bhakti is not just for Ram, bhakti will also help a person to become more virtuous in society. So in that sense, bhakti is encouraged, bhakti is facilitated, but bhakti is never imposed. And those who do not accept bhakti are not punished. They are not made outlaws. They are not made outcasts. So it's a holistic program for the all-round well-being of society. So dharma is what promotes well-being in this world, and bhakti is what will promote well-being beyond this world also, eternally. And Ram Rajya is about both. But it is not in any way what people think of as religious fanaticism. Because it is not bhakti at the expense of dharma. It is not devotion at the expense of virtue. It is devotion on the foundation of virtue. So I'll summarize what we discussed today, then we can have a few questions. So I discussed 3 main points. The first was about, is Ram Rajya, is it theocracy or fanaticism? That was the broad question we were discussing. And we said no, because in the Gita itself there are 2 different missions. We discussed. So 7 and 8 is about dharma, which is basically law and order, which is universal. And then 9 and 10 are about bhakti, which is individual. So they are both a part of a pyramid, but the first is required for everyone, for the basic maintenance of society itself. And bhakti is voluntary, that is for the individual to take it up. The second point we discussed was about this whole 4 quadrants. So we have virtue and devotion. And the ideal situation is, if there is neither virtue nor devotion, then that is the exact opposite of ideal situation. So in this life and next life will be terrible, it will be hellish. Now virtue is okay, this life can be okay, but next life is questionable. It depends on how that person is living. Then when you talk about this, is where it leads to fanaticism. Within fanaticism we discussed about exclusivism and extremism. And this devotion and virtue together, this is actually Ram Rajya. That it is devotion on a foundation of virtue. But it is not devotion at the expense of virtue. And in this connection we discussed how hell or any kind of punishment, again we can say shastra, not shastra, shastra, it is never for non-believers. It is not that Ravan is punished because he is a non-believer. It is for whom? Remember? Wrongdoers. So wrongdoers basically means that people who are driven by selfishness. Not just selfishness but excessive selfishness. Like they are driven by lust, anger, greed. And then the last part discussed is that there is this, for establishing order in society, the idea is we have, let's put it simply one. We have people, there's wickedness, there is weakness, and then there is goodness. So for the first two level of people, Shastra in terms of wisdom is what helps them come towards dharma. But for the last people, there has to be Shastra, there has to be weapons. Now by weapons, either they have to be punished or the fear of weapons will keep them in dharma. They don't follow laws because they think laws are good for me, but at least if I don't follow the law, I'll get into trouble. That's why I'll follow it. That's also good. And then lastly, we discussed that while these two are, while virtue and devotion are distinct, they are also symbiotic. That devotion inspires virtue and virtue makes devotion easier, devotion makes virtue easier. So Ram Rajya is about this combination of dharma and bhakti, of virtue and devotion. But virtue as the foundation and devotion as the culmination. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Mataji.
For clarifying it and correct reference. Thank you so much. Oftentimes in Prabhupada books we read the statement, philosophy without religion, and religion without philosophy.
Yes. So,
If you can repeat the question and that,
so are you saying how do I understand the statement in this light? Or so Prabhupada says religion without philosophy is sentimentalism, and philosophy without religion is speculation. Talking in a slightly different context. So, that is, philosophy is more in terms of thought, ideas, conceptions. Now, of course, conceptions will lead to actions. But you could say that overall, if we consider a person, there is, there are thoughts or ideas, or this is more intellectual. Then there are feelings, and then there are actions. So there is a Mai Arpita Manobuddhi, Krishna said, the mind, intelligence that leads to actions. So when we are talking about fanaticism, especially we are talking about it at this level. Prabhupada's that particular statement is more with respect to this reference point. That if you are only thinking, but if there is no emotion involved in what you are doing, then it is just speculation. If there is no love for the Lord, the ultimate reality like this, like that, also speculation. But on the other hand, if you claim there is love, but there is no rational thought behind it, then you are just being sentimental or you are being fanatic. Now, how that will translate into actions will vary from person to person, from situation to situation. But it's true, yes. So speculation, so that's more in the domain of manabuddhi. We're talking about manabuddhi, and then in the domain of kriya, in the domain of action also.
So when you speak about devotion in isolation, virtue, that also
Okay, is devotion
overlaps.
separate from virtue? Well, there are two different things over here. Philosophy. Originally what it meant was phili and sophos, love of truth. And truth is at a multiple levels. Now virtue is also truth. So, and devotion is also truth. Now are the two separate? There is a time when the two need to be separated, and there is a time when the two need not be separated, should not be separated. So, for example, there was when Srila Prabhupada met this Mishra, Dr. Mishra from the Mishra Yoga studio. Prabhupada had stayed with him in New York, initially when he had come to America. And later, after many years, after the Krishna conscious movement was established, he came to meet Prabhupada. And Prabhupada had a very cordial talk with him, they had lunch together. And then Giriraj Maharaj asked Prabhupada that, Prabhupada, thought he's a Mayavadi. And Prabhupada said, yes. He said, philosophically we argue like anything, but culturally we are friends. Culturally we are friends. So they were from the same overall, in America they were from the same tradition. So, I was just in Dubai, in the UAE. So the first Hindu temple was built over there. Now that was not built by ISKCON, it was built by some other organization. But for all the devout people over there, for all the Indians, for all the Hindus, it was a big event. And even we went and participated over there. We had our service over there. So there are times when we emphasize our distinct identity. And there are times when we de-emphasize our distinct identity. That is Bheda and Abheda. So there is a time, no doubt, to establish the Bheda. That there is a difference between us and others. But there is also time to emphasize the Abheda. So when what is to be done, that is important. So in our tradition, for example, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Murari Gupta, he was very devoted to Lord Ram. And Mahaprabhu told him, Krishna is Rasaraj, you should chant Krishna's name. He says, I can't do it. And Mahaprabhu said, so great is your devotion, that you are so devoted to the Lord. So he appreciated that is the same Lord, but at the same time, so there is, the Abhed is, oh, you are so devoted to the Lord. But then the Bhed is also there, that Murari Gupta does not become an initiating guru in our tradition. We have the Gadadhar Sampradaya, we have the we have the Gadadhar Parivar, the Advaita Parivar, but we don't have any Murari Gupta Parivar. Because this is the Sampradaya where there is worship of Krishna. So if you worship Ram, that's wonderful, we respect that. But then that person can't be initiating guru in this tradition. So there is time for Bhed and Abhed, both. Okay. Thank you. Yes, you have the mic.
Thank you for. Is it on? Hare Krishna. Okay. Thank you for the brilliant analysis and the brilliant presentation, as usual, Prabhu. So I have two things to say. So the first is a little clarification. You mentioned about Abrahamic religions thinking that hell is for non-believers as opposed to wrongdoers. So the word Abrahamic comes from Judaism, and in Judaism specifically, there is no notion that non-believers will go to hell or that they should be converted. So that's doctrinally, and also that's my experience. I volunteered for a Jewish charity, and their object was to find objects of charity, people of lesser fortune, and there was no distinction. They wanted to find anyone who was less fortunate in order to be the object of fortune.
So, see, whenever we make any broad statement, there are always nuances and exceptions. When the word Abrahamic religion is used, although it's come from Abraham is a Jewish prophet primarily, but the point is, numerically speaking, the Jews are far smaller than Muslims and Christians. And for most of the world, generally the dharmic religions, when you say, it talks about Hinduism, it talks about Buddhism, it talks about Jainism, it talks about Sikhism. But how many people really think of when dharmic, they hear the word dharma, how many people think of it as Jains? They are also dharmic, but the principle of dharma is important for them also. But so when most of the time, at least in the Indian context, when the word Abrahamic religions is used, it's not technically accurate, but we have to have some nomenclature for differentiating. So that's the nomenclature. But what to speak of Judaism, even in Christianity, there are some teachers, some Christian teachers who do say that redemption is for everyone. It is not just for people who follow Jesus. Everybody. Now they are considered as heretical by mainstream Christians most of the time. But there are people like that. So there are no doubt exceptions. So I agree with that fully. Thank you.
Yes. And it's actually, there's this question of faith versus works, and it's one of the big distinctions between Catholicism and Protestantism. But anyway, this is not our expertise, and it's not the main focus. So then I wanted to just say how brilliant is this last point that you made about bhakti and dharma being symbiotic. So we have heard and we know that bhakti is independent of dharma. Bhakti, she has her own wish, and we know that Shri Krishna says at the end of Bhagavad Gita, Sarva dharman parityaja, give up all dharma. However, and on the other hand, there has been some confusion where there's actually a large contingent of people who say that dharma is a prerequisite and we should first do dharma, and they preach only mode of goodness, and they say after you finish this then you'll get to bhakti, which is not correct. Fortunately, most of us understand that that's not the case. But this word symbiotic, this is exactly the, and it's a very fruitful word. There's a lot we can get from understanding this word symbiosis and looking at other examples of symbiosis about how bhakti and dharma can reinforce each other. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, the dharma can aid in bhakti, and certainly it is not against dharma in any way. It's a condition for bhakti. Anybody from anywhere can start bhakti. Thank you. Yes, Prabhu.
So we're going over, maybe we can take one or two questions.
Sure.
Okay.
Sometimes dharma is used as the inherent characteristic, as Prabhupada would point out, right? The inherent characteristic of something. So it's not referring to Hindu dharma or some. And then Krishna says, Sarva dharma parityaja. So there is dharma on the bodily platform, and then there's the dharma of the soul, which is the real dharma that Prabhupada says. And then he gives the example that everything is virtueless without recognizing God. Like if there are 4 robbers who rob a bank, and then they say, okay, let's divide this booty amongst us morally. But the very first action of not recognizing that it doesn't belong to them. So can there be really virtue without recognizing the proprietor? I mean, Prabhupada would sometimes give that kind of example. So how those virtues are man-made virtues based on man-made laws which can, fluctuate and...
Yeah, good point. Thank you, sir. Let me address them one by one. So what Prabhupada would call as honesty among thieves. That if we don't accept the authority of God, so if we don't accept the authority of God, what is the value of honesty? It's true. See, there are 2 different things over here. In the Vedic tradition also, there is Vyavaharik. Vyavaharik is practical or operational. And there is Paramarthik. Paramarthik is ultimate or transcendental. So, in fact, the whole idea of Artha itself is, Artha is a multi-level concept. Artha can mean money. Artha can, like Artha Mantri, for example, that's finance minister. So, the Artha can mean meaning. But Artha can also refer to meaning. What is Artha Purna? What is meaningful for you? So, at a basic level, if a person is starving, money is the most meaningful thing for them. Without that, there is nothing else available. I won't survive. But once a person's basic needs are taken care of, making money is important, but then what we are making with money is even more important. That's what will bring quality to a person's life. So the idea is that Artha is multi-level. Now for somebody, they find meaning maybe in just saving dolphins, or whales are getting extinct. We want to save whales. Well, that's what they find meaning in life. Now, we could say from a spiritual perspective, from the ultimate perspective, it may not be very meaningful. But from this life's perspective, there is meaning. Somebody finds meaning in, say, feeding hungry people. Somebody finds meaning in educating those who are illiterate. There is value over there. Now the Paramartha, Param Artha, the supreme meaning is in loving and serving God. So this Artha is a hierarchy. It's like it's a staircase, where as people evolve, they find higher and higher levels of meaning. Now, Prabhupada is not just giving us Vedic culture or Vedic wisdom. Prabhupada is giving us the highest, the best of Vedic wisdom. And from that perspective of the best of Vedic wisdom, say for example the Bhagavatam says that dharma projahita kaitavotra, that everything else is to be rejected, that there is only pure devotion that is to be emphasized. That is true. But then the pathway toward that pure devotion will vary for different people. So for example, the same Bhagavatam says that one should, the start Bhagavatam says pure dharma is what? It's selfless love for God. Ahaituki apratiyata. But that same Bhagavatam, as a pathway towards that, there is haituki bhakti, not ahaituki bhakti, that is taught by Narad Muni to Dhruv Maharaj. You want a kingdom? Take that. Now on the other hand, Diti, she wants to kill Indra. And she is engaged in bhakti. So there is an ideal, but there are steps towards the ideal. And there are different times, different steps are to be emphasized. So sometimes, okay, all this, unless you are getting to that level, everything is valueless. That will be the emphasis. But there are other times when, yeah, these things also have value. So for example, Srila Prabhupada did say that honesty among thieves. At the same time, Prabhupada, for example, did spend time with people whom he considers rishtas, people who are leaders in society. They could be intellectual leaders. At other times, Prabhupada may condemn them as speculators. But he didn't recognize that by their karma, by Krishna's arrangement, they have a certain level of influence now. And their influence can be used in the service of the Lord. So, there is a time when we look at it from a paramarthic perspective, and yes, without devotion, ultimately everything is useless. But there is a time when we look from a vyavaharik perspective. And in the vyavaharik perspective, sattva guna, rajoguna, tamoguna, there's a huge difference between them. So even if sattva is without devotion, say consider parenting. For example, we could say that if parents don't teach bhakti to their children, their parenting is a failure. That's true from an ultimate perspective. But at the same time, there is from the perspective of functioning in society, sattvic, rajasic and tamasic parenting is very different. So if the parents are themselves stoned on drugs and they don't even know their kids exist, and the kids think the only way to survive is to fight, and the kids grow up with guns, and those kids go and shoot eventually innocent school children in school shootings. School shooting is complex, but one of the common denominators among all school shooters, or most, not all, many school shooters, is that they came from very broken and disrupted families. So, from this world's perspective, a sattvic parent and a tamasic parent is a huge difference. What to speak of a sattvic? Even a rajasic, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in Chaitanya Shikshamrut that we should not even equate rajoguna and tamoguna. Says rajoguna, a parent may just tell their children, you have to become wealthy, you have to become powerful, you have to become successful. But even a rajasic parent, if their child is sick, they will move heaven and earth to try to heal their child, to save their child. And that is required for functioning in society. So, yes, ultimately, virtue without God is not really virtue. But functionally, it makes a big difference in the functioning of society. So, in that sense, we need to know when what is being talked about. We cannot absolutize everything and put it as on the transcendental level. So, there is a time to emphasize virtue in its own merit, and there is a time to point out the inadequacy, the insufficiency of virtue on its own. So both are, there's a time and place for everything. And what is the first part you said about? Before that you said one more thing. Okay, so okay, so dharma is sometimes used as inherent nature. So see, the word dharma itself has many different meanings. It's a famously multivalent word, and we can't reduce it to one meaning. We have to see how it is used. Even the Gita, for example, when Krishna uses it in, say, 2.7, Arjuna uses it, Pruchhami tvam dharma sammuda cheta. It is the right thing to do. What is the right thing to do? I want to know that. Now, if we consider 1866, Sarva Dharman Parityajya, there it is obligations. Krishna means basically that you think you have obligation to your family, you have obligation to your dynasty. Put aside all your obligations, understand that your supreme obligation is to me. You could call it as duty, that's true, but it's more in terms of I'm obliged to do this. Krishna is saying, if you are serving me, you're not obliged to do anything else. Now, after that also, it is not that Krishna just becomes, Arjuna becomes adharmic. Arjuna does that dharma, that duty, which helps you to serve Krishna. Now, if you consider 4.7 and 8, dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. There the word dharma is used for social order. I come to establish order in society. Now, if we consider 14.2, what is that? Idam jnanam upashritya mamasa dharmam agata sarge pinopajayante pralayana vedanticha. There dharma refers to nature. That if you understand idam jnanam upashritya, if you take shelter of this knowledge, mamasa dharmam agata, you will attain the same nature as my nature. So, let's just give 4 examples, but there are many other verses. So, in the Gita itself, the word dharma is used with at least 10 meanings. In Sanskrit, technically speaking, if you look at the exhaustive Sanskrit dictionary, the word dharma has 500 meanings, more than 500 meanings. So, we have to look at, now, you could connect and say that all these meanings of dharma are related, and it is true. That is foundationally, dharma means the inherent characteristic of who we are. And then, our various ways, so for example, our family dharma. So that means, okay, I am a member of this family, I have to be in harmony with this. That's family dharma. So that way, we can try to connect the various meanings of dharma. But we cannot reduce all usages of that word to one particular meaning only. We have to look at the context in which it is used. So when Prabhupada uses the word dharma as an inherent characteristic, he is basically emphasizing its non-sectarian universal nature. Now, interestingly, as far as I have seen, the word dharma is not used in this sense anywhere in the Bhagavad Gita. Among all the usages of dharma, in this sense, Krishna does not use it. Now, why not? Because that is not the relevant discussion for Arjuna. So Arjuna is not on the battlefield suddenly concerned about what is my inherent irreducible nature. He is concerned about what is the right thing to do. And Krishna is addressing that question. So yes, dharma does have that meaning. But it is not that that meaning is the only meaning, or it is not that it is with that meaning only the word will use all the time. So we have to look at the context to understand. So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Prabhupada ki Jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Itai Gaur Premanandi.
Hare Krishna. I see a lot of enthusiastic devotees